Hello, today I'll be exploring the monstrous, the beautiful, and everything in between as it relates to human nature. I'll do this through the lenses of British literature over a variety of time periods from the 1500s to the 1800s, which encompasses early literature, to the Romanticist wave of the 1850s and the 1800s, and culminating in the 1900s to contemporary time, which includes the modernist and postmodernist perspectives. Now, in early narratives, all the way from Beowulf to the Tempest, the monster is physically twisted, a hideous being, and often is just representing accumulation of traits believed to be negative by the Christian society at the time. And so one could plausibly infer that the monster in these stories is generally representing the so-called outgroup of that society, since they clearly do not adhere to the most accepted virtues or do not accept the Christian teachings. They are evidently little more than the spawn of Cain and thus ill used and ill treated. Now, the way these beasts are dealt with also reflects how the perception of these outgroups changes over time. Grendel is a vicious beast that needs to be subdued with force, therefore reflecting an earlier period where such groups were more or less on an even footing with another. Whereas in The Tempest, Caliban is a pathetic little creature at the mercy of his foreign master, and his attempts at revolt just end up in failing, and he begs for redemption by the end of the story. Now, this could represent the the European view of the native societies encountered by explorers of Shakespeare's time, and how it was believed that it was the white man's burden to carry these people into their idea of Christian civilization. Now we will deal with the perception of beauty as seen in the Romanticist period of literature, which focused a great deal on emotion and individualism as opposed to hard facts and science espoused during the Industrial Revolution. Such emotion can be explored through Blake's poem The Tiger, in which there is a mixture of fear and trepidation. And this is reflected in his engravings, in which one depicts a tiger in a very colorful, friendly light, whereas the other represents it in dark, ominous tones. Now, another example of the exploration of beauty and societal expectations of what something beautiful or at least very normal should look like is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And we see how they are ingrained in societal prejudices, perhaps even an allegory for racism by how the creature is treated. It comes into the world a blank slate, and yet, as it is produced by a man with only concern for hard facts and logic, it is essentially abandoned into a cruel world and in which people are not equipped to handle these new beasts. And so its ill usage turns it into a true monster. All of these stories help explore what beauty is in such an era. However, there's of course difference in opinion since Blake was a very much first wave romanticist, whereas Mary Shelley is a second wave, and the first wave were more concerned with the humanitarian concerns of the Industrial Revolution, whereas the second wave, while also having a degree of humanitarian concerns, focused a great deal more on this matter of individualism and emotion. Now we enter the postmodernist era, where traditions are scoffed at, the old conventions are abandoned. Instead of some grandiose events such as or sagas such as Beowulf or even Frankenstein or Goblin Market, there we simply have an examination of people, or more accurately, an introspection on what it means to live, to exist. And this covers a variety of themes, from transitioning to paranoia to distrust of the system, and these generally had not been covered in previous eras of literature. For example, Rebecca can be seen as a study of oneself acquiring greater consciousness, maturing, and overcoming psychological struggles. Whereas T.S. Eliot's love song explores self consciousness, though through a more bitter and cynical lens, as the character in the story, J. Alfred Prufrock, appears to be quite dissatisfied with life. It also explores the vague theme of liminality, which basically refers to the period between transitioning and pre-transitioning and transitioning into a different state or form. As you can see, both have very different subject matter and explore this introspection differently, whereas this introspection of the self that brings this postmodernist literature together. One could say that without these conventions of old storytelling techniques, this postmodern literature is the truest representation of humanity. That it shows people as they simply exist in this world with their ambitions, their hopes, and their dreams. And this is not in a negative sense. Rather, it's a rather empowering. In fact, instead of these stale morality tales of there being a defined monster, one can take solace in the fact that this meaning in the world is brought forth by us. There is no need for some outgroup to galvanize sentiment against. There's no need to simply navel gaze, but rather to try to live the best way they can in the way they believe they can. Thank you for watching.